Hi, my name is Marcy Svenningsen, Board Chair for the Cooperative. I officially call the 82nd Annual Meeting of Cass County Electric Cooperative meeting to order. Because of the COVID-19 pandemic, the Board approved to change the format of this year's annual meeting to a virtual meeting. We value your time, so the primary purpose of this virtual meeting will be to elect the directors in the open districts for a 3-year term from 2020 to 2023. If you have not already done so, I highly encourage you to watch the video reports from Chad regarding our financial status, Marshall with an update on our cooperative, and my report from a board perspective. They are all available on our website. Present in person at our meeting today are the Board of Directors, necessary staff, legal counsel, the candidates for director, and 2 members who form the teller committee for the election. We are all being diligent about practicing our social distancing. The first order of business is to establish a meeting quorum and announce the certification of proof of mailing the notice of annual meeting. Historically, our bylaws require 75 voting members to be present or by proxy in order to have a quorum for the annual meeting. With the reality of COVID-19, the board changed the bylaws to allow for an alternative meeting format, which required some amendment to the quorum requirements for a virtual meeting. The amended bylaws authorized the receipt of votes from 75 absentee or electronic member votes to constitute a quorum for the purposes of having a valid meeting. I can attest that there is a quorum of members that have voted, either by electronic means or by mail-in ballot, on the issues presented to the membership, as allowed in the bylaws to call the meeting to order. I am happy to report that 737 members voted, so we can have a quorum to transact the business that was specifically noticed to the members. The notice of the annual meeting was mailed to all members on July 27th, 2020. The meeting agenda has been posted on the Cass County Electric website annual meeting page and in the August issue of the Highline Notes. This annual meeting will run a little different than usual since we don't have enough members present in person to vote on other procedural issues, like adopting the agenda or approving the meeting minutes. A summary of the minutes from last year's annual meeting is posted on the annual meeting page of our website at www.casscountyelectric.com. Cass County Electric did not add procedural votes to the absentee or electronic ballot in order to keep it simple and as straightforward as possible. We will have the membership consider approving the 2019 annual meeting minutes at the next annual meeting in 2021. At this time, I would like to introduce to you our legal counsel, Tami Norgard. Tami will be explaining the bylaw changes that the board adopted this past year and will then go on to explain the election process. Tami?
Thank you, Marcy. I'm Tami Norgard with the Vogel Law Firm. We've had the privilege of being the law firm for Cass County Electric for many years, and I always look forward to coming to the annual meeting. This is a little bit different this year. But I'm talking today about, one is, the first part is what the changes have been to the bylaws this year. And the bylaws are essentially a code of conduct, the rules that the directors have to operate by. So this is laying down the law, and everyone has to follow the rules when you're operating, how you operate the cooperative. And this year, in part due to COVID-19, there were a lot of changes to the bylaws, so I've been asked to go through them. If you want to look at the red lines and any detail about what was changed, you just have to look on the Cass County website. There are a number of changes that have been made. They're very visible from the red lines. You can take a look at them. I'm just going to hit the highlights and a summary of what was changed and why. First of all, there's just some more procedural type grammatical changes that were made just for readability or some typos. But there were quite a few substantive changes as well. The first one that was made was to allow landlords to be able to submit member applications to the cooperative on behalf of tenants. The bylaws used to read that the tenant has to establish a membership on their own, which they still do, but it's usually in a stack of paperwork that they're filling out with their landlord, and then the landlord actually submits it. So we just want to make sure that our operating procedures are completely correct and following the letter of the bylaws. So that was changed. The second thing, there was a lot of changes to the absentee and electronic voting provisions. I think the co-op had foresight to add those provisions years ago, allowing electronic voting and absentee voting, but when we actually looked closely at how this was going to operate, we made some changes just to make sure that we could streamline the process and to make sure that we reduce the amount of red tape, essentially. For instance, in one location, the bylaws required a written signed ballot, and we realized, well, if you're voting electronically or by absentee ballot, you don't need to sign the actual ballot because that should be more anonymous, and it's just being submitted electronically for the electronic ballot, so that language was changed. There was also a number of provisions that were streamlined just to make things easier, make it more concise of what needs to be on the electronic ballots and on the absentee ballots. The third change was made so that if we find out about a director vacancy, if there's going to be a vacancy, rather than have to wait until that position is vacant to fill it, we made some changes to authorize essentially initiating the search for the next director before the position is actually vacant. And so that just increases or makes it more efficient to find a new director to be seated and assist the co-op in the governance. The next provision is regarding director removal. So if there was ever a reason to remove a director that sits on the board, usually it would take a petition signed by 10% of the membership. And right now you have over 44,000 members. And so as the cooperative has grown, the directors realized, well, that's going to be a pretty high number to sign off. So they changed that number from 10% of the membership to 5% of the membership in order to remove or to initiate a process to remove a director. The next provision was to allow, if somebody is no longer a member, has disconnected service, and they have an outstanding balance, we made a change in the provisions just to make it very clear that if they have capital credits that are accruing or available, that those capital credits can be used to offset or essentially pay back the outstanding amount owing on the balance. And this just helps the cooperative with collection issues. The next provision, there was a change in the language of the bylaws so that if when the petitions come in, if you want to be a director and you do a petition and you have all the signatures and you submit it, upon initial review, there have been times where Cass County Electric staff will say, oh, this should be changed, or this is off, or this doesn't conform. And so there was something that we changed the bylaws to say that the staff can, but is not required to notify a candidate if their petition conforms. So if there's something that needs to be changed, we just wanted it crystal clear in the bylaws that it was appropriate to follow up with the candidate and tell them that there was something that wasn't complying or some signatures that were wrong, but there's no obligation for them to do that. The next change was regarding the director election process, just streamlining the timeframes of what has to happen 90 days before the annual meeting, 60 days, 45 days before the annual meeting, just to make sure that we have the petitions and the review and the identification of the candidates that are qualified, just to be in a very streamlined order. And so those changes were made. There was also a bylaw provision. The board really wants people to be here in person if you're a director. And they don't want somebody just calling in repeatedly. They think that there's better discourse if you're showing up at a meeting. And so there was some changes regarding the director's actually physical presence in the meetings. And the first one, there was a requirement previously that if you were going to participate remotely, you needed the whole board to approve. That was changed, so you don't need actual board approval to participate remotely. And then given the reality here of COVID-19, there was some requirements that no board member could be participating remotely more than 3 times, and that has been required since everybody's getting very at ease with using Zoom and showing up by video, and so that's been a big advancement. And so we had to change the bylaws so that we didn't have all the board members disqualified for not showing up physically for 3 meetings. There was another amendment regarding the attendance at community events. Sometimes board members are asked to go to certain events, and other times board members just show up at a lot of community events. And there was a question about whether they're representing Cass County Electric or not, and whether they get reimbursed for expenses or per diem when they're showing up at some of these events. And so the board changed the bylaw to say that in order to show up for on behalf of Cass County Electric, there has to be pre-approval of the board that this is an event that's important for you to show up as a Cass County Electric board member, and so it has to be pre-approved. There was a provision that was changed that usually when you pay out capital credits and it's on a specific rotation, there's some small accounts, if they're under $250, they could just be, once you got to that point where it's under $250, that could just be paid out. That number was increased to $500, so they could pay out capital credits due and owing once it hit $500 or less. And that's just more for ease of administration. There's a code of conduct applicable to the Cass County Electric board members. There was a change to the bylaws just to make sure that that code of conduct applied when they were also representing or a representative of Cass County Electric on the Square Butte or on the Minn Kota board, just to make sure that they have their code of conduct in all facets. There was an indemnification amendment clarifying that if somebody was being indemnified, there's something saying that if somebody got indemnified by Cass County Electric, they couldn't have double recovery if they were otherwise being paid by an insurance company or something like that. It's more of a esoteric issue, I suppose. There's a bylaw change regarding, it used to be that you have to have 2 signers on a check and there's an approval process for check writing. Well, now in the day of electronic fund transfers, there was some changes to the bylaws in terms of what's the process supposed to be when you're not actually doing these 2 people writing checks or signing checks. So there were some changes to that. There was additional, so you as or as members of the cooperative are entitled to get notice when there's bylaw changes, and we made some changes to identify that you're able to get notice through the website, through the Highline notes, and other electronic means through email. The bylaws initially said that the annual meeting had to be held by June 30th, and here we are in August. So we had to have some changes, just given the concerns over whether it was smart to have people gathering in large groups before June 30th, decided that that really wasn't a good idea. And so the bylaws had to be changed to identify that in circumstances where the board believed that it was unsafe or unwarranted to have large groups together, that they could extend the annual meeting date beyond June 30th. So that's obviously an important one. They also identified, you heard Marcy talk about the quorum, and it used to be the quorum is 75 members present for a meeting. And the way we changed that is to establish that for any vote to be valid at the annual meeting, a quorum would be established if there were at least 75 votes of members on that question. So you've got questions submitted to you in absentee ballots and on electronic voting, and so there has to be a quorum. If there wasn't 75 votes on one of the things that was submitted to the members by electronic voting, then there wouldn't be a quorum for that. So that was changed. And so that basically sums up the changes to the bylaws this year. There was far more than there have been in the past, but obviously this is a unique year in many aspects. I'll also go through the general election procedure. I think, most of you are usually, the members are excited, dress up a little bit, come get some meatballs, look forward to the Cass County Electric spatula at the end of the meeting, and you have the big vote and the suspense of who won. Well, this is obviously very different because you're probably, raiding your pantry instead of having meatballs, and you're sitting around in your sweatpants rather than showing up in a environment to come and socialize with other members of Cass County Electric. But this virtual meeting has also required some changes to our election process. There's 9 board members, 3 of whom are up for election at each meeting each year. This year we have the at-large election, District 4, and then one of the District 5 candidates that are up for election. The process is generally the same. We made some tweaks to it this year, as I indicated in the bylaws, but generally there's the petition, and then there's the credentialing committee that meets, and after I'm done speaking, you're going to hear from the secretary on the credentialing committee report to identify the candidates and the candidates who submitted petitions and who were confirmed as being qualified to serve. And this year, it's also a little different. We've got the secretary that will be presenting, since the chair and the vice chair are both up for election this year. This year, the election process, there's no in-person voting. It's all done through absentee and electronic voting. There was a company called Survey and Ballot Systems, and what they do is they collect electronic ballots. They develop the ballot. They have a system of sending them out and collect them and report back. And that's their sole function, is to administer that electronic voting. This year, we also had absentee balloting, which we've done in the past. We've run that the same as we have historically, where if people were going to vote absentee, they sent their completed ballots to the Vogel Law Firm where I work, and one of my paralegals was in charge of keeping all of the ballots, and we certified the results and presented them to the teller committee, and that identifies all the absentee ballot calculations. I brought all the originals with me and provided them this morning to the teller committee. So at this time, I'm going to turn this over to the credentialing committee chair to talk about the committee's progress, followed by the election results. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Glenn Mitzel. I represent District 5. I live in West Fargo. At this time, I'll summarize the credentialing committee report and identify the candidates. The following members of Cass County Electric filed petitions for nomination have been qualified by the credentialing committee to run for the position of director in the districts in which there are vacancies at the 2020 annual meeting. In District 4, Jeff Treebold, Fargo, North Dakota. In the at-large district, Marcy Svenningsen, Valley City, North Dakota. In District 5-2, Terry Kraft, West Fargo, North Dakota. District 5-2, Brad Maggio, Fargo, North Dakota. Also in District 5-2, Tom Seymour, West Fargo, North Dakota. Nominations closed in Districts 4, at-large, and 5-2 on January 22nd, 2020. The teller committee members for 2020 election are Jane Lindeman, who lives in District 5, and Michael Nilson, who also lives in District 5. These individuals validated the results of the ballots received by the Vogel Law Firm and certified results of electronic balloting provided by our third-party vendor, Survey and Ballot Systems. Mail-in and electronic ballots were submitted for all 3 elected positions by August 18th. A third-party vendor, Survey and Ballot Systems, and Vogel Law collected and counted ballots received by mail and electronically and have certified the official results. A teller committee approved by the board verified election results and had the opportunity to view absentee ballots. Because of the new voting procedures we adopted this year, I would like to have Michael Nilson from the teller committee come forward and give their opinion regarding the fairness of our election process. Michael?
Thanks, Glenn. Myself and the teller committee, we reviewed the mail-in ballots along with all the electronic voting, and we certified Vogel Law Firm's certification, and we believe that the voting process was accurate, fair, and transparent.
Thank you, Michael, for your and the committee's assessment. It's very important to the board of directors that elections should be as fair and transparent as possible. Now the results of the election after all the ballots were tallied. Jeff Treebold has been duly elected to the board position for District 4. Congratulations, Jeff. Marcy Svenningsen has been duly elected to the at-large board position. Congratulations, Marcy. The newly elected director for District 5-2 is Thomas Seymour. Congratulations, Tom. Congratulations to the newly elected directors. Thanks very much also to Terry Kraft and Bradley Maggio for running for a board seat. I will now turn the meeting back over to our chair, Marcy Svenningsen.
Thanks, Glenn. Congratulations, Tom, and thank you both for running. We appreciate your interest and just appreciate your being willing to run for the board. At this time, we would typically call for old and new business and finish the annual meeting with member questions. This year, because of the meeting format change, we are dispensing with old and new business, and we are highly encouraging members to submit their questions on the annual meeting page of our website. All questions and answers will be posted for members to view. There are links on our webpage to view the following reports: Board Chair Report, the President CEO Report, and the Audit Report. And Chad would tell you that probably the best one is the audit report, but I'm a little biased, so I really hope that you go out and you take the time and you watch those reports. With no other business to come before the membership, I declare that the business meeting is adjourned. We sincerely hope that we will be able to hold our typical annual meeting next year, and we hope that all of you will be safe and well until then. Thanks for listening to the video.